Welcome back. One last time in 2023, making the cut. Week 14. Neil Smith, Lance Exley. It's been a pleasure working with everybody, and Lance, it's been a pleasure working with you this year on this show. But we're not done. Lance, you'll be moving over to Thursdays with Jason and I for Roster the People. There's just no point in doing 3 shows where we help people build rosters. So one last time, we're gonna help you get through waivers for your Guillotine. This is the last Guillotine waiver run for the year. If you've made it this far, congratulations, because you're right on the doorstep of going to the playoffs. And this year, that's saying something because this year of NFL football has been crap, objectively crap. Crap is actually polite. There's a more descriptive word I have for that, but it's not a PG-13 word. So it's been bad. It's just been nothing but a pile of injuries. And last night's game was no exception. So throw some more injuries on the pile, because that's what this year needed, was more backup players and more injuries to deal with. And so Trevor Lawrence, high ankle sprain, probably going to miss at least 2 to 3 weeks, could be 4. So you're likely not going to have Trevor Lawrence until deep into the playoffs. So yay. And then Christian Kirk, core muscle injury, did it on the first play of the game. I watched him do it. He turned around awkwardly, caught the ball, and immediately just crumpled to the ground. And I saw him immediately grab for his groin, like on the broadcast, saw him grab for his groin. And they announced it pretty much immediately that he was going to be done for the night. So I figured he literally might have pulled his groin, and they were like, nope, it's worse than that. It's a core muscle injury. He's probably going to need surgery. So Christian Kirk also going to be done for at least 4 weeks. He's probably going to do a stint on IR. Wouldn't shock me if Christian Kirk might get shut down for the year. The only reason he wouldn't be is because the Jags are looking to be like an actual real playoff team. But you saw what happened the minute that Trevor Lawrence couldn't play anymore. They went to CJ Beathard, and that's fine. He actually looked competent enough. But if Jacksonville doesn't have Lawrence and doesn't have Kirk, they might make the playoffs, but they won't do anything in the playoffs. That team will be done. So
If they can play in London, they're good. If they can't, well,
did you watch
home.
that game last night at all? Did you get a
Yeah,
chance to
I
sit
did
through
you
it? Yeah.
did you see the post game presser
No, I turned it off
with
the second the game was over.
oh, hilarious. It was probably one of the best moments I think we've had where a reporter was pushing Doug Peterson on. So Jake Browning averaged about 9.7 yards per attempt. The running game was 5 points. I want to say that was 5.72. Maybe I have those two mixed up. Anyway, it was about they were just running all like that defense was crap. And they're playing at home. So he was like, so what do you kind of attribute to why your defense played that poorly? And Peterson sat up there with a straight face and said, well, the crowd was being really loud, so it makes it hard for our defense to communicate with each other. At home?
Well, in fairness to
Your
him, he's not allowed to
defense? At,
say. In fairness to him, he's not allowed to say my defense is bad.
I guess.
He's not
But
allowed to sit
like,
there and just say my defense is bad. My quarterback got hurt. So he kind of has to
but
lie.
you can window dress it up of, oh, we just, schematically we needed to get, we needed to adjust a little bit better, or there are a few plays here and there we needed to tighten up. No, just went straight for the excuse of you're being too loud. We can't
No.
communicate because you're too loud. You're doing exactly what we ask you.
I would expect
Oh,
more, but it's Doug Peterson, who I don't think is real bright if you've ever watched him long term. And then
yeah.
it's Jacksonville, where I've been to Jacksonville. A lot of titty bars, not a lot of bookstores. So it's Jacksonville.
and, and a lot of carts and a lot of golf courses, right? Which generally have golf carts on them. And we couldn't get one of those down to fucking the stadium to get their star quarterback off of the fucking field. He had to walk on there. Like the whole time he was walking in the tunnel, I'm like, this
Okay,
could end
that was actually one of
very
my big things.
badly.
That was one of my big things. Was actually you could get a cart for anything, except
Yeah.
apparently for uh Lawrence, who has to limp his way down the tunnel while they film it. By the way,
Yeah.
they're filming him limping down the tunnel, which I would too if they were giving me the opportunity. But why is he not on the cart? Like, they got the cart out all weekend for people scraping him up and putting him on there. But no, he's got to hobble it. So I
Well,
did
and
think that was weird.
he's got his arm around two people that are shorter and probably way less than they do way less than he does. If he starts to tip one direction or the other, like,
It
yeah,
doesn't matter.
that for me was just like, what are we
It
doing
doesn't
here?
matter because the NFL is a joke this year anyway. So
Feels
it's
like,
just
yeah.
it's just the way that it is. They need to. There's a number of things that need to happen in the background with the league, in my opinion, that probably won't happen. One, fire every official and start over from scratch, with people that are not 80. Uh, hire a bunch of younger people, train them properly, and keep individual crews together and don't rotate them around the way that they do.
Mm-hmm.
You put this on the long list of things that are never going to happen. Like, there's a number of things because again, it, and I hate to be this cynical, but why not? We're here.
Yeah.
The NFL doesn't care. They only care to the extent that the advertising money stops coming in.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's no greater, like, there's no, like, they can talk about the competition committee and all that crap and all that, everything they want to talk about, and you can talk about anything you want. It makes no difference. The only thing that actually matters, checks roll in, advertising dollars roll in, money gets spent. This is what they care about. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
else moves the needle one little bit. Like, so it's just standard corporate America crap. Like, I only care to the extent that it impacts the bottom line and money. And if it doesn't impact the bottom line, you know, why would I work harder than I need to? I got paid. So, and then I realized how cynical that argument is. Unfortunately, in this case, it's cynical and accurate because it's just the world we're in right now. Is there's no incentive for anyone to do anything just because it's a good idea or because it would be the proper thing to do. No, no, no. It only goes through one lens, which is what is profitable. So that's just the way it is. So it's unfortunate, but that's
Mm-hmm.
just how it goes. Is Budweiser still sending in is InBev still cashing those checks, baby? And this is the other thing too. The other thing that might tangentially matter, is my viewership still good?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody tuned in to watch that game. And they're tuning in to watch these crappy Thursday games that they keep shoveling down our throat. We've had one good Thursday game all season, and it was Dallas versus Seattle.
Yeah, that was incredible.
That was a good game. I'm going to give them that. Go watch any of the other games. Tell me that that's a good idea. But it
Well, it
makes
was so
$40 billion. So, or whatever it is that Bezos paid to broadcast that schlock.
it was hysterical because as you know, Dallas and Seattle are going back and forth. It's over, each team has over 30 points at this point. They're trying to hook you in for next week's game. And on the graphic for one side they have TJ Watt. You know which Patriots player they picked for the other side?
I wasn't paying
No
attention.
one. Bill Belichick.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Good idea. It's actually a good
yeah,
idea.
it was just like, you can't. I mean, I get it, but you can't even put Hunter Henry in
No, enjoy Bill.
there.
It makes sense. Enjoy Bill while you can,
Yeah,
because this is looking like the final ride
the
of
swan song.
Bill,
Yeah.
the final ride of Belichick. Because I can't
Hmm.
imagine he's going to want to go do that job anywhere else.
No.
And I also can't imagine that they're going to bring him back at this point. But I do understand the idea that firing him at this point is pointless because your team is already bad. You're not going to the playoffs. Even if you changed coaches, that's not going to change. So why disrespect the man on the way out?
Hmm.
Just let him play out his string at the end of the year and then wait until the offseason when a lot of people have checked out and don't care anymore. and then just quietly announce that it's over and that you're going to have a new coach. Knowing the Patriots the way I do, it'll probably be McDaniels. Because that checks all the boxes. One, there is no God. Two, we've learned nothing. Three, what's the laziest thing that could possibly happen? Like, it just checks all the cynical boxes. And then, and he's available. Because he got fired from the Raiders. So there is a lot. The older I get, the more I start to think that there is that idea that McDaniels is just like an actual like sleeper agent, like plant that secretly gets paid by the Patriots to go to other organizations and just ruin them. Like it wouldn't. It really like when it happens once, no, that's insane. When it happens twice, ha ha ha, that's a cute little theory. When it happens a third time, you do have to question like people's brains.
Well, and to follow that a little bit is like, okay, is he going outside the conference? No, he's just staying right in the AFC.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't know what's going on over there. So we'll see. The Patriots are going to be an interesting one to watch in the offseason. They have a lot of problems.
yeah,
And whoever is going to take that job on, I do not envy them the task of trying to rebuild all of that because they haven't had a quality draft pick in 3 years. Because whatever
yeah,
the answer is, it ain't Mac Jones. And we've seen kind of how that's going to go. That roster offensively. Defense, you got some stuff to work with. Offensively, you are like devoid of talent.
yeah.
Your best offensive player is Ramondre Stevenson, and that's not really good enough.
No.
So they got a lot of problems for the future here. As it relates to this current season, I mean, yeah, that's probably why that's my theory as to why they haven't done anything with him. But yeah. So there's going to be a lot to plan for here as you kind of ride out for Guillotine one last time because you just got a lot of stuff. Like you got a million injuries, and then you got certain players that like it would almost be easier if they were injured. Like Austin Eckler is what I mean when I like it would almost be easier if he was hurt because then you just wouldn't have to have this conversation every week about what do. There's nothing you can do. You either have better options or you don't. And you just got to hope that the Chargers figure it out. But I'm very dubious that that's going to happen at this point. If it was going to happen, you would have started to see signs of life in that regard. But there's all these crazy stats. And shout out to Mike Berland from The Wire on Mondays with us. And then he had some of the interesting stats that I've seen going around other places as well. We're talking about no team has lost like the point differential margin that the Patriots have in like 50 years, where they've had like 3 games in a row where they've held teams to. I could probably do it. Let me see if I can find it because he wrote this. Some of this was written down because he was going through some of this on Mondays. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Um, least amount of points allowed and the team's record since week 9. 46. The Patriots. 0-4. So they've allowed the least amount of points scored against them since week 9 and have not won a game. The next closest is the 49ers at 49. They're 4-0. Past that, you go to the Dolphins at 62 points. So it's like it goes off a cliff. You know what I mean? So you've got things like that. NFL teams record when allowing 10 points or less. The Patriots are 1-3 when allowing 10 points or less. It's impressive they've held teams to under 10 in 4 games. Everyone else is 51-0, by the way, in the NFL. So,
Well, and it's like this past week, it's like I don't know whether to feel, you know, oh wow, they only held San Diego to 6 points, or
San
Jesus, San
Diego's not a
Diego
football team
only
anymore.
scored 6 points against this team.
I
Like,
hate to do this to you, but San Diego is not a football team any longer.
Los Angeles.
Um,
It's always gonna be ingrained in my
that's
head.
okay. I was calling the Las Vegas Raiders Oakland for like 3 years
Oakland. Oh
after
yeah.
they moved. Yeah, because as I used to say, they got to earn it. They got to earn being called not Oakland. You got to get that stink. They don't just get to move and wash that stink off. Uh, but yeah, it's one of those situations where the Patriots is a bad one. But yeah, it's as it relates to the Chargers. No, it's just that team now.
Hmm.
That team doesn't. And I know a lot of people want to blame Eckler, and they're saying, "Oh, he's like a shell of himself." I don't even necessarily believe that. I don't think it is 100% that Eckler is just suddenly a shell of himself and he's just old and that's the end of it. I'm sure there's a little bit of that. I think it's the idea that you have nothing else on that team. Your O line is bad. Your only viable wide receiver is 30-year-old Keenan Allen. And when you only have one other player that's even somewhat capable, what are defenses going to do to you? Especially the Patriots, who that's what they've always done my whole life. They take away the thing that you want to do. And that's how they say you can beat us, but you got to beat us with something that isn't this thing that you like to use. And they they can easily stop that as it relates to to the Chargers on defense. They just couldn't score any points because that's the whole problem with the Patriots is we've learned the lesson of history at this point where we've seen it. We've seen it happen. Nobody wanted to acknowledge how important Tom Brady was to that whole operation. And we saw we've got more than enough data at this point. Tom Brady leaves, and the Patriots haven't really been able to figure it out since then. I think have they even? I don't even know. I'd have to look. I don't even know if they've been to the playoffs in a post Brady.
They made it the first year. Um, Second year I think was close. I think it was just the way the dominoes fell, like the last week where they were like
Sure.
1 inch away.
Either way,
Obviously, they are so far out this year
doesn't
where it's
matter
just not
because my whole
even.
point was you saw what happened.
Yeah,
Tom Brady leaves, and then they went and won a Super Bowl,
right.
and it's like okay, Belichick has never won since then. And it really is getting to that point where it's starting to just look like I say this all the time. Father Time is undefeated,
Yeah.
and it just looks like the game is evolving away from Belichick, and he's not able to kind of just make that evolution one more time. Hard to fault the man. He's like 70, so you're getting to that point where it's like I see it in my own parents and family when as they've aged and gotten older. They just can't do it at the same level the way that they
Hmm.
used to because they just get old. It's nobody's fault. But at this point, I don't see how you could possibly justify running that same Patriots team back out there next year with Mac Jones and Bill Belichick and all that. No, something's got to change. And if you're Belichick, why do you want to keep doing this? Aside from like proving that Tom Brady wasn't the thing. Well, I hate to tell you, buddy, but even if you did it, even if you won a Super Bowl, at this point, people are still going to say that to you. And first of all, why do you care? You got more money than God. Like, just go be done. Just
Yeah.
hang it up. But it's not. I don't know the inner workings of that man's mind. But the Chargers is a disaster because it's just you got Allen and you got Eckler, and those are like the two things that actually function on that team, and you've got nothing else. So when you have a Patriots level defense that shows up and says, "Okay, I'm going to take away Keenan Allen, who's been playing on one leg for the last couple weeks anyway, and I'm going to stack the box against Eckler, and you're going to have to beat me with something that isn't that." Well, that's just not happening.
Do you know how many rookie receivers drafted after Quentin Johnston have more yards than him?
I think it's like I've seen that stat. It's like all of them.
Yeah, you saw that graphic too?
Yeah, it's like
It
all
was
of them.
8 of them.
Yeah, and it's
And
Addison, and it's like Rashi Rice, and it's just everybody that
yeah.
was drafted after him that actually is like playing and making a difference.
And it's like
So no,
not
yeah,
even
it's
close. Like he has 190. The next closest is 435. Michael Wilson.
that's what I was saying. Michael Wilson, yeah,
So,
and Michael
yeah,
Wilson, by the way, has been hurt for like
exactly.
weeks.
Yeah.
So he hasn't even played in like their last 3 games.
Hmm.
So Johnson just doesn't matter. That's why I didn't want Johnson, because a lot of that scared me coming into the pre-draft evaluation process. TCU, scary. Only plays on one side of the field. Can't do that in the NFL.
Mm-mm.
And then I think the idea was he was meant to have a redshirt year so he could learn. But it's the Chargers, and no one can stay healthy.
Ever.
Mike Williams, I don't really believe in the term injury prone, except Mike Williams, because Mike Williams is legitimately like, it's like that episode of The Simpsons where uh, they try to frame uh, that guy for killing the waiter, and Bart sees it because he's playing hooky from school, and it's the episode where he's like, "Chowder, chowder, it's chowder." It's that episode where the waiter clumsily falls out the window and lands in the truck full of mouse traps.
Mm,
And he keeps trying to prove that he's not. He
yep.
keeps saying he's not injury prone, and every time he does, he hurts himself. That's Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Like I don't really believe in injury prone, but there's something with Mike Williams where it's his knees are just not really set up to take the pounding that the NFL wants them to take, and he only knows how to play one way, which is like with reckless abandon and like full diving and contact, and
He
he's hurt every
needs a
year.
little bit more Buzz Lightyear of falling with style, because the way he
Yeah,
falls is like he's getting WWE body slammed every single
yeah.
time.
And it's just I don't really blame like people normally for like being injury prone is like a myth. Like Edwin
Hmm.
Porras, the fantasy doctor, could explain this better than me, but he explains it very eloquently. Injury prone in reality is a myth. It's not a real thing. Except as it relates to like a very, very small handful of people, if at all. And it's just like Mike Williams is kind of that guy where
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like, nah, he's always hurt. It's always something. And it's always a thing. And it's just and then the Chargers paid him and I just couldn't figure out why. It's just inexplicable that you would pay that man that level of money to just get hurt every year. And they just can't seem to figure it out. And now they've had to pay Herbert. Allen's on the wrong side of 30. He's had a great year. He's played through his
Oh yeah.
own series of injuries. No one can take that away from him. Has Eckler been great? No, he's been hurt. I could see why they didn't want to pay him a big contract extension. He's getting older. His body is taking a huge pounding. They desperately want Josh Kelly to be the guy. That's never going to happen. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Like it's same thing with Isaiah Spiller. Cool thing, never going to happen at this point. If it
Yeah.
was going to happen, it was going to happen already. And it's like that contract is just they're not paying him a lot of money, but it's like you got to start making sacrifices at a
Hmm.
certain point with the Chargers, and they've taken more injuries on defense, and that's just how they work because that's just they have a type. They like guys that are talented, but they have guys that are hurt, and that's also there's a reason that when they rank medical staffs, the Chargers is always ranked near the bottom because Dean Spanos doesn't have that kind of money to hire the best and brightest, and it's just the way that it is. So that's why the Chargers really historically don't succeed. But in this case, it's like, yeah, as it relates to Guillotine, it's like the number one question I've been getting is, what do you do with Austin Eckler? And I'm like, you sit him because it's suicide at this point.
Yeah.
So you just unless it like you in redraft or in dynasty, you might not have better options, and you might be stuck. In Guillotine, where the penalty for failure is elimination, I mean, it's going to be really hard, even in those other formats, when we get into the playoffs in a week, to sit here and tell you, yeah, you start Austin Eckler with confidence. No, I mean he's putting a bunch of 4s and 5s. He's losing playing time to Josh Kelly, which I don't agree with, but it's what they're doing. And the Chargers is a shell of an organization at this point. Frankly, I'm amazed Brandon Staley is still employed.
Yeah, that might be Kellen Moore come this time next year, but we'll
And if
we'll
it is
see what
Kellen Moore,
happens.
that might be great for Austin Eckler, but who knows? He might not even be on that team by the time that happens. So you have a lot of situations like that in the background as it relates to some of these bad teams. And so for Guillotine, you're just going to have to be kind of ruthless. This is the final waiver run, so there's no point holding on to your money now. Blow it all. So spend the load, folks, because this is the way that it's going to be. Uh, blow it all because you're done with it at this point. You don't get to take it with you at the end of the year. There's no prize for having leftover money, so spend every dollar you have be kind of ruthless about it. Just dump it. You don't need it anymore. And then as it comes to setting your lineup for this week and then every week beyond, you're going to have to be a little picky. That's just the way that it is. You're going to have to be picky. And there's certain teams and certain players that I'm kind of done waiting for them to figure it out and get it going. They're just going to ride the pine. And that's just going to be how we have to be for this year. Because this year is going to be the year of the backups and the replacements, apparently. Because everybody who's a starter is going to get hurt. So we're just going to play backups. Like, we'll talk about this on Thursdays, I'm sure. But like Rachaad White's an interesting one, for example, where it's like, has Rachaad White actually been good in fantasy this year?
Gets a lot of receiving yards, gets the receiving work. So I mean, if you're playing standard, I would. I don't have Rachaad White on any of my teams, but looking at what he's done and whenever I've gone against him,
I'm not asking you a fair question. The answer is no, because he's been hideously inefficient. Hideously inefficient. He's not averaging a lot of yards per touch. He's not averaging a lot of yards per reception. It's volume. It's just pure volume, but more than that, he's available. And he's not hurt. Of course, now that I've said that, but that's the issue with this year. Has Josh Jacobs been good this year in fantasy? To ask that question, same question a different way.
After they fired McDaniels, he's definitely been better.
That's the real answer to the question. But that's the true answer. But where I'm going with is not really.
For where you drafted him, no, he hasn't.
You'll take it.
Thought.
You'll take it when you look at the box scores and at the end of the year when you see on the spreadsheet, oh, he was RB4. Right. But look at the beginning of the year. It was brutal. But he played every game. And it's like that's where we are this year. That's just going to be the way that this goes this year, more so than in other years, where it's like, was that player good? Is largely going to be overshadowed by was that player available? That's just going to be that's a large component to this. Like that's going to be how this year gets. That's how I'm going to always remember this year. I think is that was the year of just availability. Did you play in every game? Because if you did, you were probably in the top 5. Because nobody played in every game that year. They were all dealing with injuries, and everybody got hurt. Like I said, we saw it again last night. Lawrence is done. Kirk done. I think on a silver lining, the interesting one for that was Jake Browning. And I've seen a lot of people trying to anoint Jake Browning today, and I'm not there yet. Because you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier with Jacksonville's defense played really poorly. But I will say positives for Browning. He made Jamar Chase matter. And for fantasy, a lot of people cared about that. I would have liked to see him spread the ball around a little bit more and get T. Higgins involved. But who knows? Maybe that'll happen a little bit in the future. But because Higgins has been hurt and they haven't really had a lot of practice time together. But I was impressed by Jake Browning, who I didn't really have much of an opinion on because I never really saw him play at Washington. Because I got to tell you, man, I'm going to bed by the time those Washington games are happening. I don't give a damn. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I watched a bunch of Washington football games, especially from a couple years ago. So no, I didn't watch those. So I've never really seen Browning play much. And I saw him play last week, and I was like, "Ooh, that didn't look good." He just looked more confident. And I don't agree with some of the play calling, especially some of the trick plays that, like, even if they worked, I'd have been like, okay, I mean, if that's what you want to do. But the moment didn't look too big for him. He looked like he was capable of, like, assembly lining something together that, like, is he going to take the Bengals to the playoffs? Probably not. But is he going to be embarrassing? Well, it didn't look like that. It looked like he was going to be better than embarrassing. So that's good. The other big takeaway was Mixon in what was a terrible matchup. What was a terrible, terrible matchup. He got it done.
Oh yeah.
He did not have a lot to work with in that game. Not a good matchup for him. Stack boxes all night. 8 men in the box all night long. And he still ran for like 65 yards and scored twice and caught some key passes. He had a really nice night.
He won a lot of matchups for people last
He
night
did,
that
especially.
had no hope going into
Well, the
it.
problem is too. A lot of those people, he didn't see the field. He got benched
Yeah.
because nobody played him. A lot of people didn't play him, so there
Mhm.
is that as well. And it's like, okay, well, that's an interesting takeaway for the future because yeah, Mixon got out there and was like, I ain't dead yet. So that was an interesting lesson from the weekend. I thought that was good. Sunday's games were, as I was telling some people, the technical term for it is poopy, 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 butt, doo doo. Uh, that's the actual like legal term. Um, so I had to check with a lawyer on that. So I had to know what we can legally say. And those games were. At one point, one of my favorite jokes that I make, Lance, as people who get to know me will attest. One of my favorite jokes is I wish I was illiterate so I didn't have to read that. And one of my thing from Sunday was I wish I was blind.
So you
It's
didn't
just
have to see
I just
that.
but then the problem was that I could still hear it. So
Mhm.
you'd really have to be blind and deaf. Like, but then like that's overkill. So it's like you don't want that. But no, those games were horrible, horrible product all weekend. Not made better by the officiating. Uh,
I
I
think
can't believe.
the
Uh,
biggest letdown was Philadelphia and San Francisco not being as competitive as it should have been.
I left actually. I decided to I decided to go do something with my afternoon and at halftime. I was like, I'm done. I've had enough.
Yeah,
We're good.
I was able to keep tabs on some of it, but I actually drove all the way out to Green Bay and saw the Kansas City game live,
Oh
and that was
wow. Okay.
yeah. We had a buddy of mine was gonna go with his brother because his um got linked up with someone who has season tickets, and then his brother got COVID, so I lucked out, ended up getting a seat, and I've never been to Lambeau. I've always wanted to go, and it is just if you've never been and you're a football fan, go to Lambeau. As a Bears fan, I can honestly say it is top three football experience
Okay,
in
I
your
can see that.
lifetime. It is amazing. Like Titletown, there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. So but yeah, I was a little disappointed when I got there and decided to follow up on the San Francisco Philadelphia, and it's like 42-19. Come on, that was supposed to be. And granted, do I enjoy a little bit seeing the Philadelphia Eagles get their shit pushed in for how much shit they've talked? Yes, I feel most people do. But at the same time, it's like, dude, come on, 19 like, ugh. So, but there were some close games. There was some like granted it's against Tennessee, but I thought Indianapolis did all right, keeping that game
That
close
was the
and
one
pulling it
game that
out.
wasn't a disaster, and
Yeah,
even
and
that
then
was ugly. It's like the every other game that wasn't that was like a total train wreck. Like it's just like every game, especially in the morning, was
I don't know
really
how
bad.
Denver and Houston was as close as it was when you factor in Denver mostly went punt, 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 and then the last four possessions of the game, three of them Wilson threw an interception. So it was just like, oh my gosh, dude, like
Yeah,
what are we doing here?
Wilson's bad. It is what it is. The
Yeah.
he's Wilson. It might just be possible, just maybe. Russell Wilson isn't actually good, as we've kind of been discussing for the last
Hmm.
several weeks. Where it's like, yeah, that guy saw that final play too. I was still watching at that point, and I'm like,
That was
oh, it's so bad.
embarrassing to watch. I'm like, what are we doing here?
It was super, super ugly. Like just incredibly ugly.
Yeah.
Uh,
And too bad about Tank Dell. That stinks. I
yeah,
mean,
nice story cut short. We'll
yeah.
see if Houston can kind of rally in the background here
They got
and rally
Stroud. I
around
I
it
think
and
they'll
see if they
be
can try to make the playoffs.
I think that honestly, I think they kind of in that mosh pit. I think they kind of emerge as one of the favorites because they still have their
Well, if
quarterback.
Jacksonville is done, right? Like if Jacksonville is going to have Beathard, the problem is Jacksonville. I've seen their schedule.
And they're in the AFC South, so I mean, it's like, you got to factor in. Indy, I don't trust them to string it together for long. Houston, I think, could be the biggest threat to them. But, Jacksonville, if they can figure out that, the defense, I think, at least they can kind of maintain 500 and still go into the playoffs.
Well,
But Houston, I
that's what I
think,
mean because all you have to
yeah,
do, they play no one good.
yeah.
They'll have one game left that is hard, and
Hmm.
it's Baltimore, and that's going to hurt. But
Oh,
aside
yeah.
from that, they don't play anybody that's actually good.
Hmm.
So you've got a lot of winnable games, even if it had to be Beathard. They just need to kind of ride it out, and they should be okay. So it's an interesting situation as we kind of nail down the playoff scenarios. But as we go through it here, just keep that stuff in mind, folks. Is that you're gonna have to be brutal when setting your lineups. You're gonna have to be ruthless, and it's getting to that point in the year where it's like, look, if you haven't figured it out by now, you can't play some of these people and give them another shot because this is
Yeah.
the last regular season game, and then the games really matter and it's playoff time. And so it's like this is it. And again, one last PSA, as we know, last waiver run for Guillotine. So blow the load. Don't
Hmm.
leave anything left. Just roast it and whatever's available. So with that, let's go through quarterback here. You touched on the Colts. Gardner Minshew is going to be, once again, God, how many times have we done this? Talking about Gardner Minshew as a streaming option. It's one of those things that we've talked
Too
about
many.
literally all year. But this week I like him again. He's my number one choice. Playing on the road at Cincy. They shouldn't really have too many issues moving the ball in that game. And this week you only have two teams on a bye, and you're not really looking for replacement level quarterback as much because it's the Commanders and the Cardinals. So if you've been rolling out Howell or you've been rolling out Kyler Murray, you might be looking for something. But Gardner Minshew is an interesting sort of option for the stretch as well. So he's an interesting streaming option because it's Cincinnati, and then it does get a little tougher in Week 15. I wouldn't want to play him in Week 15 against Pittsburgh. I would avoid that. But then Atlanta and Vegas are somewhat attractive. So Minshew is one to keep in mind. He's my number one choice. Uh, and then it gets interesting after that because things that are available after that are Josh Dobbs, which would be attractive. Dobbs is going to be interesting for the remainder of the season because he plays the Raiders, which is a huge plus matchup, but he looked terrible against Chicago, which was also a huge plus matchup, but at least that's a division game. And then they had a bye to figure it out. Here's my problem. I don't know if he's even going to be starting. I bet you he does,
He's good. I feel
but
pretty confident he will be.
I'd like to see that get confirmed. So,
Yeah.
but he's on the page because he's playing the Raiders, and then his next couple games are Cincinnati, Detroit, and then Green Bay in championship week. So if you need something as like a QB2, like a break glass in case of emergency option in like a deep league or a 2 QB league or in a guillotine league where you don't get to make any more waiver claims, by the way, after this, yeah, Dobbs might be interesting for the ride. So he's my second choice, and then after that, you're looking at uh, Will Levis and Jake Browning, or Jake Browning and Will Levis. I don't really care. You can order those two personal preference wise. It's kind of the Spider-Man meme. Will Levis has a good game on paper this week against Miami where they'll have to throw, but then he plays Houston twice down the stretch. I would be more excited about that if those weren't division games. And then Browning has kind of had like a mixed bag, and then he plays Indy, but then his schedule gets way harder. So that's kind of the knock on Browning is like, yeah, love the huge game against Jacksonville, but there's going to be some much harder tests that are coming up, not this week in week 14, but he plays Minnesota in week 15. That has not been a great matchup for QBs. Week 16, he plays at Pittsburgh. You don't love that. That defense has been pretty good. And then in championship week, he plays at Kansas City. Same problem. That defense has actually been pretty good. He'll have to throw, but yeah. So those are my like true streaming options for this week and a little bit of a look, down the lens at beyond. So who do you like, Lance, as far as stuff like that goes?
For me, it's kind of a toss-up between Minshew and Dobbs, and I'm gonna side with Dobbs here. I think, he came in, no one expected him to do what he did early on, and you know, as he got more comfortable in the offense he was in, I think he shied away from running it and tried in essence to run it the same way that Kirk Cousins ran it, and you saw that all kind of implode on Monday night against the Bears. So, granted, two of those interceptions probably should have been catches, but I think what you're going to see is he's going to come out against the Raiders and he's going to get back to exactly what gave him the start in the first place, which is running the ball. So I think for the rushing upside, I'd probably, go with Dobbs over Minshew. Um, Levis, I just don't trust. And I don't,
No, he's all over the road. He has good
yeah,
games and then he has really bad games, and it's kind of hard to figure out what you're going to get.
I feel Browning with the rushing upside can at least get you this isn't what you want, but super flex, whatever. He'll at least get you a floor of 11, is what I feel. I feel a lot safer with Browning than I do Levis. Um, and what a shame that right as we might see Jameis Winston, the waiver wire is going to lock.
Yeah,
That I
yeah.
mean,
And
that is
I'm not
one
waiver claiming Jameis Winston.
I would love to tell people to do that, but with the waiver wire locking, I think you just, cooler heads have to prevail. So,
Right.
it's unfortunate. We all love it. We all know what it's all about. He's Gardner Minshew on steroids, but it unfortunately too little too late this year is kind of what it's looking like.
Yeah, and then as far as guillotine goes, just specifically, again, it's easier to do this as far as things I don't want versus things that you do. And like, for example, if Jalen Hurts somehow after last week I mean, you would obviously blow the vast majority of your remaining fab to get him, right? Like, doesn't really matter what your quarterback situation is. You would want to do that.
Oh,
So that's not really
absolutely.
helpful, right? Like, duh, I know. Same thing with Allen. There are certain things that I really am looking for, and there are certain things that I definitely do not want. So, and I'll do it this way: things that I do not want for my stretch run in guillotine, especially things I want to avoid. Tua, been pretty good all year. Their schedule down the line is freaking brutal. It is not great for opposing quarterbacks. It's basically all negative matchups all through the playoffs. Jets, Dallas, Baltimore. Yeah, I'm good. I know it's Dolphins. I know it's Tua. I know he's been playing really well. Yeah, no kidding. Like, seen it. I've been paying attention all year. I know. Really don't want to deal with those matchups down the stretch. Trevor Lawrence, another one. If you lost Lawrence last night, I would treat that like I need to find a replacement for the rest of the year because his matchups down the playoffs super brutal. Even when he returns, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and then you would think Carolina is a good matchup. It's not for quarterbacks because you can do whatever you want to Carolina, and frequently they just run the ball at them. Jordan Love, brutal schedule. Now we're moving into like QB2 territory.
Mm.
Don't want Jordan Love as my QB2. I know it's been a cute story, and they beat Kansas City, and he had a good game. I don't care. He plays the Giants this week. Enjoy that, because then it's all bad matchups down the rest of the stretch. Don't really want to deal with Jordan Love as my backup. Jared Goff. See everything I just said. Sam Howell. Yeah, time to be done with that. Time to be done. And then I would be more excited about Jake Browning if the schedule wasn't so brutal. It's really brutal. So that's the stuff I do not want. Things that I would want, like more so than the average. Dak Prescott. Highly doubt it's available, but if by some miracle he was on the team, oh my God, I would spend so much money on Dak Prescott. Because his schedule, he's been playing great, and his schedule down the rest of the way, phenomenal. Cowboys have a pretty easy run to get in. CJ Stroud, everybody already knows that. We don't need to sit here and belabor that point. Brock Purdy. Yep, I'm in on that. Kyler Murray would be interesting, and then we get into QB2s, a couple QB2s that I would like as my backups. Geno Smith. His schedule gets so much easier. So much easier for Geno than what he's just gone through, because he has a terrible game this week against San Francisco. But then it's, for the majority of your playoffs, Philly, and then at Tennessee. Love it. Love that. You love that. You love to see it. And then we talked about this a million times. Russell Wilson. Is he good? Not really. Does their schedule get a hell of a lot easier? You bet your ass. So as my backup, Russell Wilson would be very interesting. We've been saying that for a while, actually, because it's Chargers this week. If you need something to help you get in, Detroit. And then in week 17, assuming you get that far, Chargers again. Love it. And then Dobbs is the other one that's kind of like wild card. Their schedule gets really easy because it's the Vikings, and the Vikings just get handed things for entitlement reasons. So those are things that I'm more interested in than the average. So that's kind of where I'm at for Guillotine. How about you, Lance? What do you like? What do you like and don't like? Anything you want to throw in or take issue with anything I just said?
No, for the most part, I agree with most of those players. Herbert's definitely one that I'm avoiding and trying to stay away from.
Yeah, I intentionally didn't mention Herbert because I don't know how to feel. Because you'd love to have the schedule that he has, but it's hard for me to get excited about it just given everything else that I've seen. So it's like the schedule is good. Will it matter? I don't know.
Well, he's kind of in that same category that, Lawrence was, where, recently Lawrence had been doing really good, but up until that point, it's like you drafted him at a certain point, so you feel
Well,
you
you
have to
don't need to
start him,
tell
and it's just
me.
like,
I've been dealing with it all
yeah,
year.
I drafted
I had him I had him in
so,
a couple keeper leagues I play in because it was
yeah,
cheaper. And I'm like, even at the discount, it wasn't worth it.
no.
And then he started playing better, and I'm like, okay. And then he started playing better right around the time Jared Goff started falling off.
hmm
Jared Goff reverting back to the player that I know him to be. There a
Turn
lot of
back into a
people lining up to
pumpkin.
kiss Jared. A lot of people lining up to kiss Jared Goff's ass, and I'm like, just wait.
Yeah.
You'll see why. You'll see why. You'll see
There's
why
a
he's
reason
never
why
been.
McVay was like, nah, I'm good. I'll
Yeah,
take
like
this
nah, I'm
banged
good.
up 30-year-old over,
Yeah, I'd rather. Yeah, give me chronic back injury Matthew
yeah.
Stafford, and then they won a Super Bowl, and it's like, yeah.
Another one that I feel is kind of flying under the radar a little bit, maybe a little bias on this, but Justin Fields, he's got a shitty matchup week 15 against when he goes to Cleveland, but he's got home versus Detroit, then obviously he goes to Cleveland, at Arizona, at Atlanta, then he ends the season at Green Bay.
So I
Then he
intentionally didn't bring him up either, which is funny because you found the two that I intentionally skipped and have no opinion on, because my
Mhm.
bias against the Bears as a lifelong Bears fan does not allow me to have optimism around Fields
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen him have good matchups throughout the course of the year, and it just doesn't matter. Like I'm moving my way as the year goes to the camp of you need to move on from Fields. And is that Fields' fault? I don't actually think it is. I think it's the Bears' fault, and they've kind of screwed him up in the head. He's damaged goods now because he could have been good if he was. This is why I talk about this during our draft coverage. So you bear with me because some of the fans know where I'm going. But like, this is why landing spot is so important in the draft. This is why. Is because you can be talented, but if you go to a bad situation, your career can get really messed up. And it's very, very important that you wind up in a decent landing spot for your career to have success in the NFL. It's just like life. It's just like real life. You can be talented and you just get put into crappy situation after crappy situation. And eventually it takes its toll. And I feel like I'm watching a guy like Sam Darnold style seeing ghosts. He doesn't have any confidence anymore. All he knows how to do is run for his life because that's what the Bears have taught him. Is the it's like the clock in his head that says I need to throw this ball is really screwed up because he just stands there, pat, 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 sack, pat, 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 run for your life. And it's like you watched what was happening when they put in Beijing, and it's like and they scaled the offense way back as we've talked about before on this show, and it was more effective because it was just you got back to the basics of just give the ball to freaking Donta Foreman and then throw the ball as necessary. But they don't want to do that when Fields is out there. They want to run the full offense with all the crazy motions and all the stupid checkdowns and all the idiotic dump off screen pass crap that they want to play. And I hate that offense because it doesn't work. And it's like it's not helping Fields. I feel like I'm watching a man who is just mentally broken. And it's like they're like, no, we're gonna fix it. And I'm like, are you gonna fix it? I don't think you're gonna fix it unless you could fix the O line. Because that's the only way that you're gonna fix him is getting him to like have some confidence that he's not gonna get blindside sacked over and over and over and over again. Because that's what I feel like I'm watching. They've never been able to protect his blindside, and now you've literally broken him because he's afraid. And I would be afraid too, by the way. Like that's what I feel like I'm watching. So I don't know. You could give Fields all the plus matchups you want in the world right now, and I just don't have any confidence he can take advantage of them. Because what's going to happen? Like,
Well, I'm counting more on his rushing ability and the whole, like you said, run for your life. Because I think whether the Bears stick with him or not, these last 5 weeks are going to be a tryout for him, whether it's for the Bears to stick with him instead of someone else or another team to trade for him. And, the better he performs, the better that team is. And when he's at his best, he's running.
yeah,
And against Green Bay week 1, yeah, they lost. Yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, it was extremely disappointing after what you thought was going to be that season. But he ran for over 50 yards in that game. Was a quarterback 15 on the week. Detroit ran for over 100. They lost, but he was a quarterback 8 on the week. So I mean,
sure,
you
sure.
know,
I
I
don't
think
disagree with the rushing floor. That's been the whole argument the whole time. But what did I
yeah.
say when we started this? You have to be ruthless.
Hmm.
And rolling with Fields and Herbert is not ruthless. That's hope it works out this week and they remember how to play football and the ball bounces their way. There's always going to be some of that. But in
Hmm.
Guillotine, where the stakes are always, lose and go home, and then in my playoffs, in my regular leagues, you look me in the eye and you tell me you have confidence in any of that. You're not going to do it. Like
I
that's that
got
wishy-washy crap that I don't have time for at this time of the year where it's like, "Oh, it could be okay." No, I don't need could be okay. I need is going to be okay. Has shown me that they can do it
mhm.
consistently. Like you're in a position right now where it's like if you might deal with that situation because you have no other options, right?
Right.
But that's very different than I have confidence in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm at a point where it's like, no, if I have any control over it, especially in Guillotine where it's like I could still make some bids. Yeah, I'm not trying to ride out with Herbert or Fields and then turn on the game and then watch Herbert put up a 7 again. Like I can't deal with it. Stakes are too high at this point in the year. There is no more next week. There is no more. Oh, it'll get better next week. No, maybe it will, but I'll be eliminated and I won't care anymore and I won't be watching it. Like I'll be sleeping in. Like because I ain't getting up to watch these disaster of a product that they're trying to shove down my throat if I ain't got some sort of reason to do it. So that's kind of where we're at here. That's my whole point here. So I'm not trying to like if you have more confidence in Fields or Herbert than me, more power to you, my friend. But I don't agree. I couldn't bring myself to be sitting there trying to start either of those players with my fantasy championship playoff stuff on the line.
No,
Like,
I just want to clarify. I wasn't in on Herbert at all. I brought him up as someone I would avoid.
oh, okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
No, 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 no. I was not. I put him in that Trevor Lawrence category, which, if anything, it's like, yeah, he had Trevor Lawrence and he did well over the past couple weeks, but it's like it almost makes it easier for you because now you don't have to, oh, I have Trevor Lawrence or do I play Tua who's gonna, you're kind of doing that to yourself. So no, Herbert, I don't like. Fields, I'm gonna roll the dice with the rushing floor. I mean that constantly is gonna give you an edge. Um, when you have a quarterback, and yeah, the other stuff, the fumbles, the interceptions, the inefficiency doesn't help. But if you're at that point where you need something, nothing else is good out there. I'm definitely gonna aim for a quarterback with a rushing
I
floor.
can't refute that. I cannot
You know.
agree or argue with you about that line of logic because that's ironclad.
Hmm.
That's 100%. All right, let's go to running back here. Um, so running back's interesting. Weekly PSA for Tajay Spears because we officially did it. We had to do it every week all year because people don't listen. Tajay Spears should be rostered in 100% of leagues.
If it
Everyone who
isn't after this week, I don't know what to say.
well, there's no more discussing it. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We held up our end of the contract.
We've
So
tried.
take Tajay Spears out of it for a second because we've been doing that all year. I have 3 guys that I'm interested in after that. One is Zeke. Gross, I know. Patriot. But with but with Ramondre Stevenson nicked up again, it does become interesting slightly because what I could see the Patriots doing for the remainder of the year is just stuffing the ball into Zeke's chest and just saying, just go do whatever. Like I don't care anymore. like like it so that would be one that would be interesting to kind of hang on to. I am not of the mind like a lot of people I've seen today on Twitter talking about blowing a huge amount of your fab budget on Zeke and getting excited about it. I'm not super excited about it, but I am interested in the idea in the idea that if he was going to get increased volume, maybe there is something there. But if somebody wants to throw their whole fab budget at it, obviously in Guillotine that's a little different. But in Guillotine, your options will be very different on what you can bid on. But for regular leagues or even dynasty leagues, if he was available, I would take a flyer on it. He would be near the top for me. And then the other one is the next name I would have to people should look at is Roshan Johnson. Way more involved last week. And Donta Foreman being hurt, you saw kind of what the Bears were thinking, where it's like, all right, let's give Roshan a shot. So that makes him a little more attractive if they're going to. We'll see if they do that again. It's a little hard to pin down, but they haven't gone back to Herbert, even though he's been healthy. You know what I mean? So I don't know what the story is there. I don't think they're going to tell you what the story is there. Maybe he's healthy enough to play, but he's not going to be at 100% the rest of the year. They won't say we won't know until the off season at this point what's going on with Herbert. That is something I've noticed where he's basically not at one point he was a threat to take over that whole backfield. And then he got hurt, and then they went to Foreman, and then Foreman got hurt. And now it seems like it's Roshan's turn just by virtue of probably being the healthiest, because he was very involved last week. So I would be interested in taking a flyer on that potentially, but again, I'm not going to like blow the whole load for it. And then the last name that I would be interested in is Ty Chandler, just based on the idea that Alexander Madison has underperformed all year. They seem to want Ty Chandler to get involved at this point. They want somebody to do something, and they've been slowly getting him more work in all season. And then the last game we saw with the Vikings, I almost want to just throw it out of the sample because nothing went right in that entire game against Chicago, and they were immediately on their heels, and nothing went well that entire day. So it's hard for me to like blame Ty Chandler for having a bad day when the entire team hit the skids and they've had a bye now to figure this out. So I'm interested to see what the split is coming out of the bye. And I think a lot of people will have forgotten about Ty Chandler. He's very available. That's the kind of thing you could probably get for $5. And it's like $5 for Ty Chandler. Yeah, I'd do that pretty easily too, because I stack him on the end of my bench. We see how they look coming out of the bye, and you might have something, you might not. You'll know pretty quickly. And running back, have I mentioned that running back is a tire fire of a position this year? Feel like I do this every Tuesday. So we'll spare people for the 1,000th time having to hear that again. So yeah, like you don't have a lot of good choices in the background here, but like I've seen a lot of people trying to talk up Kenny Gainwell. All that's doing is murdering DeAndre Swift. Latavius Murray is done. Tired of hearing about that. I don't care about Rico Dowdle. I'm only interested in Dearness Johnson if I was the person rostering Etienne at this point in the year. And I've seen people talking about like Elijah Mitchell, the idea that they need to get somebody involved to keep CMC healthy. I mean, I got precious little evidence of that. So it's like there's a lot of running back is bad, man. There's just not a lot of good options. So there are 4 that I like, and then everything else is kind of like situational or crap. And then DJ Dallas is the other one I've seen. The only reason you'd be interested in DJ Dallas is if he was starting for the Seahawks, and both Charbonnet and Ken Walker are not playing. And we don't know that yet. And I think you could probably wait until Thursday, Friday to wait and see if you need to roster DJ Dallas. There's no reason I'm picking him up tonight. I'm not putting in that claim. And even if he did get the start, let's be clear about something. DJ Dallas isn't good. If he was, he wouldn't have lost his job 3 times. To everyone. That man lost his job to anybody the Seahawks have car washed through there, going all the way back to Chris Carson. Remember that? Remember how DJ Dallas was supposed to be the nail in Chris Carson's career? Yeah, no. So that didn't happen. So yeah, running back is super crappy and thin. So like I said, there's 4 names that I could honestly with a straight face recommend for logical, tangible reasons. And then it goes off a freaking cliff. So what do you think, Lance? Anybody you want to pound the table for here?
I would probably put Ty Chandler right below Tajay Spears and above Elliott and Roshan Johnson.
Sure, you can order those 4 that I have in any order you want. As far as I'm concerned,
Yeah,
it's the same.
I
to me.
Just to circle all the way back to what I said about Dobbs, I feel kind of what you alluded to too, is that last game was an aberration. They tried to, dial the offense all the way back to how it was under Cousins. That didn't work. They've had a bye week to sit there and ponder it and realize, wow, maybe we should just go back to what we were doing before, and that's running it. And I think the more they run it, the more they're going to see that they need to get Ty Chandler involved over Madison. Just putting it that way. And DeAndre Swift has some sort of undisclosed injury, so it's not really clear whether he's going to miss time. But if he does miss time, like Gainwell's going to play all 3 snaps. He's able to catch passes out of the backfield. It's not great, but if you're in need of someone just because all these
I have
injuries
not
are just
seen. Did
piling
they
up.
wait? Are you talking about they literally have like a DeAndre Swift questionable undisclosed tag? Because I have not seen that. If that's what you're saying,
Um,
that's very rare. They normally make you at least stipulate a body part.
undisclosed, yeah.
I have not seen this. I will have to look
No.
into that after the show. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to take a picture and send it over to you.
Well, post it on the Discord more than me,
Gotcha. Let me.
because I have not
He
seen that today.
ended up getting hurt late in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of hand. His injury doesn't appear to be serious, but managers should.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good
So,
enough. That's good enough for me. Okay, so they'll
gotcha.
they'll add a body part at some point here in the background.
Uh-huh.
All right, that's fine. Fair enough. I
Yeah,
wouldn't worry
so
about that
obviously it doesn't look like he's gonna miss much time, but
if at
if you
all.
get
But it's
a
more what's killing him is just the lack of efficiency with the Eagles right now to begin with. They've
hmm
been winning some of these games, but it is
it's been
not
ugly.
it has not gone well.
No.
Like this
It's
time
kind of
last year, they were rounding into form and looking like they were going to take on the world. And right now, it's like they're barely hanging on with their fingernails.
they I mean, ironically feel like the other team that was, playing opposite of them in the Super Bowl right now because the Chiefs kind of feel that way too, where it's just like, they got a winning record. Ultimately, I think the AFC is going to go through the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Chiefs. But some of these games they're playing, it's like they're struggling to beat Detroit. They're struggling to beat Green Bay. Like they're obviously not the Chiefs of old with Tyreek Hill. That's been, we get that.
They're not even the
But
Chiefs of last year with Juju Smith-Schuster.
that's exactly where I was going. Is like it almost feels like this team has, even though Rashee Rice has come in and been phenomenal, Pacheco feels like he's taken another step in the right direction. It just doesn't feel like it's cohesive enough.
Well, they don't have anything else that isn't that. They have Kelsey.
Yeah.
Rice is a rookie who's been coming on slowly. Pacheco is starting to round into like who he's going to be as an NFL player.
hmm
Uh, but beyond that, they have nothing.
Yeah.
And Kelsey. Beyond that, they have nothing. And their defense has played a lot better this year than what it should be theoretically capable of. And credit to them for figuring that out.
hmm
Because without that defense, they would not be nearly as high up the tree as they are right now. Because they have
No.
no ancillary pieces that can actually function. Sky Moore was supposed to have his you know ascension year or whatever you want to call that. Like he was supposed to be taking the next step. Hasn't happened.
Yeah.
MVS is a train wreck. Like MVS is not. If MVS is on that team next year, I'll be stunned because he has given them nothing. So MVS is like horrible at this point. He's done nothing for them. He's just been brutal. Uh, drops, sloppy play. He's killing you. He's done nothing except run down the field with his arm up, and he can't even do that properly.
He's Gen Z Troy Williamson.
Yeah, and you've got. And I would rather have like Tutu Atwell. At least he's
Oh,
doing it well, and he's younger.
I
Like
would
it's
Tutu Atwell for me is in a whole nother category aside from yeah.
no, it just the issue is they're getting nothing outside of
Yeah.
like, and even then it's like Kelsey is really like doing a lot to hold up his end. And yeah, Rice has been playing better recently because he's starting to figure it out. And
hmm
Pacheco has been a little bit better, but it's like McKinnon's done nothing. CEH is terrible.
No.
I've called it, by the way, in that draft. Called it. I've been right about that forever. That CEH is terrible. On on any other team, he'd be on the practice squad. Like it's they just there's not a lot to get excited about outside of like Kelsey is the household name everybody knows. Rashee Rice is the guy that fantasy people are coming to like. He'll be way overdrafted next year and will be unattainable for anyone like me who will refuse to pay the sticker shock that will be. You all have fun hitting each other with sticks to deal with that while I go draft other players that are real. While I go get even more Michael Pittman shares. Like, people don't watch Michael Pittman once again come into next year rated as the wide receiver 30 in drafts, and I just laugh and laugh and laugh about how people don't learn anything. And they're taking Rashee Rice as like wide receiver 18 because he plays for the Chiefs. It's like, God, it's just so depressing because it's every year, every single year that happens. So we're gonna get into that, but yeah, the Chiefs is a mess, man. Like it's not the recent Chiefs teams. So no, they've got problems in the background. We were talking about Ty Chandler, by the way, about how you were going to have
Were we?
Ty Chandler. Yeah, Ty Chandler was
Okay,
going to be
this.
your Ty Chandler was going to be higher up the list for you. And like I said, I don't really have a preference on the 4 in
Yeah.
the background.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, the Vikings are going to get back to running the ball. And the more they do that, the more they're going to give Chandler a chance. And yeah, and following up Gainwell, obviously, with the potential if Swift misses some time, I'll take a week of Kenny Gainwell catching passes and just
If he
pumping
misses,
up
then
that. If he misses, yeah, but
then maybe.
yeah,
The other one that I wanted to bring to your attention, I intentionally left somebody off, but I thought you were going to talk about.
Dowdle.
No. Oh, God, gross. No. You'd have to actually be involved for me to care. Keaton Mitchell coming off the bye. I intentionally didn't bring up
Oh,
because I left it there for you.
is he still under the roster?
I think
You said?
so.
Oh wow.
I think he is.
Yeah.
So I thought you were going to talk about Keaton Mitchell. That's why I intentionally
I
didn't
thought that ship had
bring it up.
sailed. Otherwise, I would not shut up about Keaton Mitchell. I mean, what
No, I think you can go
they're
look at that in the background. I
yeah,
can try to find it.
we dig into that. Where is he? There we are. So we got 54% on Yahoo,
That's
31 on ESPN.
yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying like you go by the average.
Yeah.
So he's only
So
averaging like somewhere in like the 40s. That's why I was saying Keaton Mitchell is
yeah,
technically would qualify, I think.
I
So no,
mean,
it's worth looking into, I think.
they do have a tough schedule, but with the way the Ravens have been playing, like it's definitely worth a shot. Like they're not going to shy
More
away from running the ball.
I actually prefer dealing with him when they have a tough schedule because when they have a crappy matchup and they're going to blow them out, that's when Gus Edwards rides back into the equation because they just run the ball
Hmm.
because they don't give a crap if Gus Edwards is healthy or not long term. Like just a rental car for them.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Keaton Mitchell, when they actually have a hard game that requires actual like passing work and stuff, he's the one that gets out there at that point. So that's why I was saying like Keaton Mitchell is attractive.
Oh yeah. And I
And we
mean,
saw it
hey,
right
week 15 he plays Jacksonville. So
right.
just
We saw it right before the bye. I'd been making my CJ Spiller comparisons like early career. And there's like CJ2K is what people really want to say. But I'm like, no, Chris Johnson had volume. This is CJ Spiller because
Chris John Chris Johnson was legendary for what he
yeah,
was
he
able to
had
do.
volume. He
So
was
yeah, we're not gonna make that comparison yet.
before the injuries took their toll like they usually do. That man was on a whole other planet.
Oh yeah.
So you get into a situation where I view him more as like a CJ Spiller type comp because it's like, no, this is what happens when you have a guy who's a threat to score, but he only gets 8 carries. Well, we
Hmm.
saw before the bye last week what happens when they give Keaton Mitchell something resembling a proper workload. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if he's going to get 15 to 20 touches a game, that's a whole different conversation. That's a whole different animal. Start talking about flex at that point. Like, because he gets enough he gets enough carries to I should say touches, not carries, enough touches to merit getting looked at in a different way. It's like, that's a different thing. Like, you're gonna give me enough scratch off tickets with him touching the ball, okay? We might, because yeah, Gus Edwards went off a cliff, and I think he had 4 fantasy points in the week before the bye, because the Ravens actually had to like play the whole game, and it wasn't just, here you go, Gus. Here's little 1-yard bunny touchdowns for you. Like that, when that doesn't happen, yeah, Gus Edwards is not nearly as attractive. So
3.7. He just came short of 4 points. So
I was pretty close. I was doing that from memory. So there you go. All right, let's go talk about some wide receivers. Wide receiver is very interesting. It's also crap. So there's a lot of crap out here. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what we didn't do? Completely skipped it.
Guillotine.
Yeah, guillotine running back. This again is easier to just tell you what I don't want more than it is what I do. And this is hard because there's just so few running backs. So few. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like it's easy to dump on Austin Eckler and the Chargers. This is where I've been saying be ruthless. It's harder to be ruthless here. But I want to talk about Eckler just in one more second, which is they've been brutal. It's well documented. We just spent a lot of time on it on the show. I don't want to rehash all that. Here's what's frustrating. Eckler has one of the best schedules for the playoffs that you could have. It's just so frustrating. Like, you want to sit him, and then you go to actually look at it, and it's like, give me your reason, please. They play Denver, great matchup. They play the Raiders in Week 15, fantastic matchup. They play Buffalo in Week 16, great matchup. And they play Denver again. I don't want to keep doing this, but it's going to be really hard to justify sitting him. Like, it's really hard. So it's like, that's one of the ones where it's like, yeah, you want to be ruthless, but like, crap. This is what I'm saying. This game is really hard at running back because, like, CMC would blow my entire load for it. Etienne would, same thing. I'd spend a good amount of money on Bijan, Kyron Williams, Tony Pollard, Gibbs. Achane is up there at this point, given what we've seen when he's actually healthy and what they seem to want his workload to be when he is healthy. And my God, it's pretty attractive. Rashad White because of volume, Jacobs because of volume, Kamara because of volume, Pacheco because of volume. Swift is an interesting one at that point. Saquon, I'm less excited about, but it's volume. Henry, Javonte Williams has a brutal schedule. He's kind of the one that I'm one of the more nervous about. But you see my point? Like, it's really hard at the running back position to sit there and be like, no, I don't want that. Because there's just not enough guys. With all the injuries that have happened, okay, Jalen Warren is in a timeshare with Najee Harris. Jalen Warren and Najee Harris are both borderline RB2s weekly.
I would argue that Najee Harris is in a timeshare with Jalen Warren.
Whatever, I don't care, but we could make that semantical argument. It's not my point. It's not my point. My point is that they're in a timeshare, and in most years, like go back to last year, neither one of them was like RB2 territory.
No.
This year they are. Both of them. Both of them are.
Absolutely.
Because that's just how bad the position is right now. The position is super brutal. It's very hard to be picky because you could be in a situation where your running backs were Aaron Jones and Ken Walker. You could be in a situation where your running backs were Nick Chubb and Ken Walker. Your running backs could be like, I could go on and on and on and on and on with all the injured running back crap. Like, it's really hard to be picky. Brian Robinson is now hurt. Like, I've been talking about the idea of, we talked a lot about the idea of you might want to fade James Cook. You know what I mean? Too bad. Too bad. You probably don't have that luxury. That's probably a thing you're doing. You're probably going to have to play him because what do you do? Like, There's just not a lot of good choices, and it's really hard for me to sit here and poo-poo and be like, "Oh, I don't want that running back who's actually starting and getting meaningful work." Like, no, man, that's just what it be right now. Like, you're talking about the idea that rest of season in the ECR, uh, James Cook is an RB. He's RB 24. Yeah, kind of has to be because you start looking at what goes on behind it, and it's like it gets really, really ugly really quickly. Like you're talking about like after RB 24, the RB 25 in the ECR, like the rest of season rankings, is Ken Walker, who is hurt again and has been dreadful all year. Brian Robinson, who is now hurt with a terrible schedule in a timeshare, probably going to miss some time. Jonathan Taylor is not even playing. Is at 27. Jerome Ford has been brutal recently and is like on a team that hasn't even been running the ball. Najee Harris, Keaton Mitchell, Devin Singletary, Zach Charbonnet, Chuba Hubbard, Aaron Jones, Gus Edwards, Zeke, Madison, Dylan, Spears. You see my theme here, right? Like that position has problems, straight up problems at running back. Like rest of season, you've got a lot of just junk, and it does get to a point where it's like if you have a player that is healthy and is starting and has got a meaningful amount of work, like has more or less the job, you're probably going to have to play him. That's kind of the level we're at with running back at this point. So it's really, really frustrating this season, Lance. It's super frustrating. You know what I mean? To deal with running back at this point. It's kind of just whoever's healthy.
At this point in the year, it always kind of feels like that, but this year in particular is just
It's
like,
worse.
yeah.
This is worse. Normally there's a cut where I'm like, nah, I don't care. Like you're talking about like Chuba Hubbard. If he keeps playing the way he's played the last 2 weeks, Chuba Hubbard could be a league winner just by virtue of existing. So like that's so sad. That is so sad. That is the saddest thing. Like, aw, like that's where we are. Like, yeah, that's where we are. Like, for example, I don't really want to play Joe Mixon too much rest of season because he has a bad schedule. You know what I mean? Well, he
Uh-huh.
had a bad game last night, put up 30 points. You don't have options, more than likely.
No.
This is probably what you're doing. And it's really hard to sit here and like nitpick this year with all the injuries and all the crap. And it's like, you got to go. You get to 30 in running back positionally, and it has gone off a freaking cliff so aggressively that you're literally grasping at straws and you're just like, I don't know. Like, okay, I guess he's healthy. So it's really hard for me to sit here like I've done, like I usually do most seasons, and I'm like making real recommendations. So there's certain players that I like more than others, but if you got a guy that's in the top 24, you're probably playing them. I'm not thrilled about having to roster Saquon Barkley, for example, rest of the way. Bad schedule, bad team, bad schedule, but he's going to get volume. And it's like, well, it's going to be hard to make that argument. Javonte Williams is a similar thing. Bad team, bad schedule, but he's getting volume. And it's like so I'm lowering my expectations for those two players, but normally in a different year you'd be like, no, I want to bench them, or I'd want to have traded them before the trade deadline. James Conner is another one. I know he had a good game, the quote unquote revenge game narrative. He's been brutal outside of that. James Cook is another one. I don't really love it. Ken Walker is another one where it's like if he was actually going to play, but now Charbonnet is hurt and he's hurt. They're all hurt. The whole friggin' backfield is hurt. It's like it just gets it's so disgusting running back as a position this year where it's like, no, you're probably just not gonna have the luxury of being picky. You know what I mean? You're
Mm.
probably just gonna end up in a situation where you're gonna have to roll out good stuff. And what's gonna be hilarious, Lance, and I'm calling this now, You know how this year in pre-draft was like the year of the wide receiver where everybody was on the first round was just littered with wide receivers. Well, you know what people love to do? They only remember the last thing they saw. It's a trait of human beings. Uh, it's uh, it's uh, it's just how people like process information. They have a tendency to really just remember the last thing they saw, and they don't really remember like long term. They have a tendency to overreact. Well, guess what next year is going to be? Freaking 12 running backs is coming off that board. Like that is happening. We are going back to the old ways, my ways, the ways I came up with,
Oh
where you
yeah.
take all the running backs early and you just load up on running back because even if they fail, you need all of them. And you can figure out wide receiver later because it's a way deeper position. By the way, it's how that's how I continue to play in a lot of leagues where it's like, nope, you just keep taking running backs because I got to have two that can work. And this is the reality of what happens when that doesn't happen. People get cute. So I am waiting for that adjustment. So, is there anybody, as our last show here, is there anybody that you really want to pound the table for, or you really want to tell people to stay away from with guillotine stuff? Because I had a really
You,
hard time with this as I laid out.
yeah, there's one I have in mind, kind of in that same category though, unfortunately, that I'm finding where, like where you put Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams. I want to tell people to stay away from Brees Hall.
Yeah,
Like he's averaged 1.2 yards, 1.4 yards, and what he's averaged under 2 yards per carry 3 games this year. And unless he breaks a long run, like that's just kind of how he is. But he's just getting so much volume. And,
he's putting up
granted his,
double-digit fantasy points every single week, even though it looks like crap.
uh, yeah, the past couple weeks has kind of slowed down, but the
21, 10, 11, 18, 12, 11. I'm telling you right now, it's double digits every week.
Brees Hall.
Yes. I roster Brees Hall in like a ton
Huh.
of leagues, dude. Like, I can read you the game log right here. I have it literally in front of my face.
Okay.
16, 1, 4, 10, 28, 20, 21, 10, 11, 18, 12, 11. He catches passes. That's what is
Well,
happening.
yeah, that's what I'm seeing here too. Is I'm seeing, I guess, different numbers on Fantasy Pros,
I'm
and
literally
we were
looking at
just
Fantasy Pros. I'm literally
you
looking at
are.
Fantasy Pros. Did you flip it to PPR?
Why would it just default to standard? That's
I
so
don't know. I
annoying.
don't work for Fantasy Pros. I'm just an affiliate with them. I don't claim to understand why they lay this out the way that they do. But I can tell you from like actual, like
Oh,
real lived experience, Brees
yes,
Hall is a
that's
great
what I was.
example. It's
Volume is king, and
in
he's
standard
getting targets.
in standard, aka no point. And please stop playing that format. It's terrible. It died a long time ago. Yeah, it's really brutal, and you wouldn't want to play him.
Hmm.
But in PPR, it's just enough
Hmm.
to keep him relevant at this point and to keep him off the bench because you probably just don't have better options.
Well, yeah, I mean he's got 9 targets twice this year, 8 targets last
This is
week.
not
Like,
Brees Hall's fault. This is the fact that the Jets are terrible and they
yeah.
are literally stacking the box on him. And they are everybody who plays the Jets, they stack the box on Hall, and then and he's also beat up. And then
Hmm.
they also just double cover Garrett Wilson on every play
Yeah.
because the Jets don't have anything else that isn't those two players.
They have Zach Wilson,
Hmm.
who is reluctant to potentially come
I don't.
back. I don't know.
I don't
That's a
believe
whole.
that. I don't believe that at all. I think that's very narrative-y. All right, so yeah, you
Yeah.
and I see this broadly the same way, which is like, yeah, there's a lot of crap on here that I'm not excited about, and in other years,
Hmm.
I would probably be telling you to sit it, or I'd be telling you to like have traded it, or to like whatever. But the problem is the lack of bodies this year has made this really hard.
Oh yeah.
Just the lack of available players has made it so that the position is just a tire fire. And it's just so bad. So it's gotten to the point where it's just anybody who's healthy enough to play, you're probably playing. So let's
Yeah.
go to wide receiver here. Wide receiver, as far as traditional waivers, I don't have much. It's actually a lot of the same names from last week. It's kind of the same thing. So Elijah Moore continues to be somewhat interesting, right? Because Flacco actually looked competent. Really funny to me. This is really funny. It's just really funny. Like that Joe Flacco just refuses to die. So it's like he actually looked competent, and then Amari Cooper is nicked up even more somehow, and Moore actually looked okay. I mean, uh, he got you 12 fantasy points in a not great game, and he didn't have any carries either. The thing you'd really care about is that he got 12 targets. He only caught 4 of them, but 12 targets is a lot. That's if you're getting 12 targets, you deserve to be rostered.
Mm-hmm.
So Elijah Moore is the one that I am most interested in, especially because I think they're probably just going to stick with Flacco. Because why wouldn't you? Like I know they lost that game, but he actually looked competent. So Elijah Moore is who I'm most interested in off of admittedly crappy list here. And he actually is kind of in his tier by himself because everybody else has real problems. I would urge people to maybe consider taking a look at Noah Brown, who is finally healthy again, and will pick up some additional work because of Tank Dell not playing. So Noah Brown could be interesting, but he's very boom or bust. So we'll have to see. But Noah Brown for $1 is very intriguing for the theoretical upside that it could produce. Demario Douglas, as he continues to work his way back. Demario Douglas, last we saw of him, was putting up some legitimate numbers. I know it's for the Patriots, so nobody watches it, and it's ugly as hell. But he does continue to put up double-digit fantasy points. He had 11 points. So, yeah, Demario Douglas is interesting. And then I am contractually obligated to mention Rashid Shaheed, who should be filling in for Michael Thomas. The problem with Rashid Shaheed is actually not so much a problem innate to him. It's a problem more innate to the crappy Saints. That being said, Rashid Shaheed with Jameis Winston starting. Oh, put it in my veins.
Mm.
Put that directly in my veins. Just huck it. Just put a blindfold on Winston and just let him just huck it. Like that's, oh my God. Can you imagine the deep shots, Lance? But the deep shots. The amazing Jameis Winston deep shots with a man with Rashid Shaheed's speed. Oh my God, it would be the only play I called. It'd be like that really annoying kid in Madden who just keeps taking deep shots. Like
Every
that's
single
all
play.
I would.
Every
That's
single
all I
play.
would do. It's my only play. Like it's just all I would do all day. So that's why I had to put him back on here. And then Curtis Samuel is worth another look. He also had another. We were talking about him being kind of a mess of a season for him, but he put up double-digit fantasy points again, and it seems like he's they're throwing it to him some more. So he's on bye this week, so that doesn't super help you for this week, but could be worth a roster spot for the playoffs, especially with all the injuries. So it might be worth it, and it'll be very, very cheap, especially with him being on the bye this week. And then my last one is the one that we kind of talked about at length last week, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it. But it's Josh Palmer,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I have IR slots in my league, and I probably do. I would like to waiver claim Palmer, throw him in my IR slot, and then immediately go do whatever else I need to do after that. Because given what we've seen so far, if Palmer can just get back to healthy and get back on the field at some point this year, he's a flex, like right out of the gate. So he's a flex with potential low end wide receiver 2 upside. We talked about that last week, and nothing has changed. And then, so that's kind of where I'm at with this. The way I would rate it is, Elijah Moore is like 1. Palmer I almost put in a class by himself because it's not really something. It's like a long-term stash.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have IR slots, okay, bring that up to your commissioner in the offseason and see if you can get at least one IR slot added. It's 2023, for Christ's sake. It's not 2005. Like, we can have certain niceties to help each other out. Like, it's fine. So I almost put them in their own little bubbles separately. And then of the rest, it's like Brown, Shaheed, Douglas, Samuel is kind of how I'd rank it. Yes, that's kind of how I would have it. So that's kind of how I view it. For just standard waivers. How about you?
Yeah, I think like you said, Palmer's kind of a long-term stash, so I would probably list that one first. Um, Elijah Moore I like, but it's December. This Cleveland offense is going to be running the ball. They have Joe Flacco and they can make it work. It's fine. And Moore occasionally might get some rushing attempts again. It'd be nice if they started ramping back up with that. They've kind of shied away from that, but yeah, I think if Cooper misses time with concussion, he'll definitely be up there. But the ceiling for the Texans offense, like I am drinking all the Kool-Aid for that. And Noah Brown's got over 150 yards twice this year already, and is right
Yes,
after Tank Dell went
the
down.
two good games that he's had all year.
True, true. But right after Tank Dell went down, like he was out there right alongside Nico Collins. So that tells you all you need to know. Like he's going to be involved in this offense, um, moving forward. Someone to watch who could be interesting, who honestly I probably wouldn't be opposed to getting now, is I'm going a little bit different route than you went, but Khalil Shakir. He ended up having to take the starting role of slot receiver from Hardy, but since he's done that in about week 7 or so, like he is kind of. I remember we had a talk about the Bills, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about, when they were good and having Cole Beasley, having John Brown, all these good slot receivers. And now they got, a tight end who can catch, they got a running back who can catch, and in all reality, they just need a slot receiver. Well, Shakir's kind of slowly coming along and being that for Allen. I mean, he's not putting up amazing numbers. Diggs is always going to be the target hog in there, and then Kincaid and Cook are going to get theirs, and Gabe Davis is going to catch pass every now and then. But Shakir's been someone who, seeks week 7, has put up numbers pretty consistently. Like not amazing numbers, but from about right to 10 to 20, I'd take that with the exception of the Denver game, which that was just crumple that up and throw that out the window because that was just Denver went on a tear for like 5 games where it felt like they were world beaters, and thank God they finally came back down to earth because it was annoying to see that Sean Payton smirk again. So
No, it is what it is.
yeah.
I've seen the Shakir thing. I'm not a fan. I'm just
Hmm.
not interested. I just don't have any faith in the Bills that they're going to fix it this time around. So it looks too broken to fix within one season. And I am
Hmm.
to the point where I'm starting to warm up to the idea that Stephon Diggs might end up going playing somewhere else. So, and if that happens in the offseason, I'm not sure exactly the state of his contract. I'd have to pull it. I'm not sure if this is the out year or if it's next year, but that relationship appears to be sort of souring in the background. And I don't know what that team's going to look like in the future. They got problems, and I agree. They need a slot receiver badly. And Shakir is doing that job admirably for what he can do. But the problem is, it's just not. It's just not something I want to count on for my fantasy playoffs. Is my issue with it. So I don't trust it. I'm a little nervous about it, so I'd prefer to not deal with it if I could avoid it. But I get the
That's fair.
logic, though. I can't argue with the logic, but that you use to arrive at any of that. It's
Hmm.
not incorrect. Like it's just personal on my side, where I'm like, nah, it's just not something I can deal with. Um, so in terms of guillotine, like this is also kind of interesting because like there's certain players that I'm less interested in. Like Diggs, for example, is a good one where their schedule is really hard. And as somebody who's been rostering Diggs all year, I can tell you what a roller coaster that's been. It hasn't been super fun. So I could see issues there. Like, for example, if Diggs was available on the waiver wire in guillotine, you might not have better options, but I'm tempering my expectations for it. I would still bid on it. I'd still blow the load on it, but I'm tempering my expectations. I'm not as thrilled about it. Same thing with Justin Jefferson. Coming off the injury, I know they had the bye. He should be playing for the rest of the year, but with Dobbs, I just don't know how that's going to look. Might be fine, might not be. Really impact him coming back really impacts Addison. So you've got situations like that that I'm not thrilled with. We talked about it last week. I'm not crazy about Jalen Waddle down the stretch. I've referenced the Dolphins' brutal secondary. Calvin Ridley is another one that I was like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. And you would think that with the Christian Kirk thing that we just talked about at the start of the show, that would change my opinion on it. It kind of doesn't, because now I have concerns because now Ridley's going to have to deal with even more coverage being devoted to him by opposing defenses. So will he see an increase in targets? Probably. Will it matter? Because he's got two guys draped on him all day? Yeah, that's my problem. The people that I think benefit more in Jacksonville is like Engram, because it's Beathard and he's going to work the
Hmm.
middle of the field and he's going to need a safety blanket. And that's Evan Engram all day.
And Ingram's been good this year too.
He's
I
been
mean,
fine.
that's
Yeah.
not to take anything away from him, but
But yeah,
yeah.
Ridley, it's like I don't know if how I feel about that. I'm not as enthused about that at all. Uh, we covered some of this last week. Like I told you before, I'm not a big fan of Rashee Rice. Like with the schedule the rest of the way, I know he's been getting more volume, but their schedule's not great. And, you might not have a whole lot of options. And frankly, if he was like your wide receiver 3 at this point, it's fine because he's putting up pretty consistent double-digit points. Uh, he only had 60 yards last night or Sunday night, and he still managed like 14 fantasy points. So it's hard for me to argue about that. I'm not thrilled about it, but if he's like my wide receiver 3, okay, like that's fine. Terry McLaurin is straight up droppable. Um, like you can feel free to just drop that at this point. Uh, so yeah, how the mighty have fallen. I really hope one day Terry McLaurin gets to play on a real football team, because it's not his fault. He didn't suddenly forget how to play football. But his whole career is just a mess at this point with the way Washington operates. And then things that I'm, very interested in that I'd really want. I mean, there's no amount of money you could tell me that I wouldn't put on CeeDee Lamb. I would put every freaking dollar that I had on CeeDee Lamb. Uh, I'm still interested in Keenan Allen. Uh, how could you not be interested in Mike Evans if it was somehow available? But I doubt it. Uh, take that off to the side for a second. My perennial favorites of Brandon Ayuk and Michael Pittman are performing very well this year. Love both of those guys. Would be happy to roster them for the playoff stretch. Pittman on volume, Ayuk on talent. Uh, I know a lot of people are interested in Puka. Uh, as long as he doesn't miss time, Puka's has been pretty interesting. But that being said, playoff schedule is a lot better than it is this week. You got to get through this week to really get interested in Puka. And then a lot of people are kind of freaked out by DK Metcalf. Well, you saw what DK Metcalf got to issue a lovely reminder of what he can do when people are actually throwing him the GD football. I talked about Geno Smith. Their schedule gets so much easier coming up here. So DK becomes somewhat interesting if he was available. And then honestly, Debo, it's basically your 49ers. And the What was my last one? I had like a deep cut that was down here. Scrolling is always good. Oh, yeah. Never mind. Those are the guys that really matter. That are like above wide receiver 3. That I think I could be convinced into like kind of getting myself excited about, like for what they could actually do to try and win you a league down the stretch. So that's kind of how I view it. So I'm curious, Lance, what are you excited for? Who are you hoping is available in your guillotine? Like who are you hoping that team is like, come on, get eliminated so I can go bid on your stuff?
CeeDee Lamb obviously has
Yeah.
been amazing this year, but if Amon-Ra St. Brown's out there, I'm all for it. He
Yeah. Yep.
didn't have a great week against the Saints, but
But body of work.
yeah, body of
Yeah.
work, like their offense runs through him. And I guess before the season started, I was like, they have Josh Reynolds, they have Jameson Williams, but like they can't just throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown every single play. Yes, they can.
Sure did.
Yes, they can, and they
Sure
will.
did. Sure
Yeah.
did.
So
Like sure
they're
did do
and
that
they're
thing.
yeah. So they're gonna continue to do so. He's been such a beast this year, and he's really kind of taken a leap into the next tier of wide receivers. So it's been fun to watch him kind of mature and you know turn into one of the better options in the NFL. Um, DeAndre Hopkins, anything with a Titans logo on it that isn't Tajay Spears, I'm good. Like I just do not want the headache. And the little bit of red zone I saw before I hit the road was Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins yelling at each other before the Tank Dell injury, or maybe it was after, or not really yelling at each other. It was more Will Levis yelling at DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins pretty much just being like, "Yeah, sure, okay, like whatever, bro." So
Yeah, well, DeAndre
it
Hopkins is probably not going to be around that team for too much longer. He'll go play somewhere else.
yeah.
I think
Um,
he's going to want to go play for a contender, and that's not the Titans. The Titans are going to go through a full rebuild.
yeah. Even with Trubisky, I'm not too keen on either Pittsburgh wide receiver. It
No,
just feels like you don't
no.
know any other week, and
Honey,
their
I've seen way too
schedules.
much Mitch Trubisky play football to be excited about any wide receiver on a Mitch Trubisky team, okay? Like, who are you talking to? I watched all those crappy games. No,
He was the
no.
MVP,
I
Nickelodeon favorite player
He sure was.
or
Because
valuable player is
if
what
you
I
ever
meant.
needed more evidence that children are dumb,
Yeah.
there you go. That's my go-to
Yeah.
argument. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, you combine that, him under center, you have Johnson and Pickens. Both of them seem to have their issues this year where it just nothing's going right for Pittsburgh. So
and
you
yet they
probably,
keep winning games.
if I'm
It's
not
a
even gonna.
testament to Mike Tomlin.
It
The fact
is.
that
It is.
Mike Tomlin has dealt with some of the most difficult individuals that you could ever deal with. Like he was dealing with God on a long
Antonio
enough
Brown.
timeline. Antonio Brown is the one that people will always remember, right? Because that's the guy that I'm convinced that at some point, even he has admitted that he thinks he has CTE. And I'm like
You
there's
think?
interviews with him where he's talking about that, and I'm like, yeah, dog. And he thinks he could
Yeah.
pinpoint the play. It was in that Bengals
The
game where he got,
Vontaze perfect play.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was in that Bengals game where he got hit in the head
Well,
really
that's
hard by
what.
Montez Perfect. And he's even said, I've never been right since that game.
Well, yeah. And I mean that when he was on the Raiders doing all types of crazy for that one day he was on the Raiders before he got released.
Tampa.
Um
Just all of it. And then he was dealing with Le'Veon Bell, prima
yeah,
donna Le'Veon Bell,
Chase
like
Claypool,
the guy
Juju.
that they had to change the rules for because of his holdouts, Le'Veon Bell. They
Yeah.
literally had to rewrite the CBA.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, Chase Claypool, who gotta love his confidence.
Mhm.
Gotta love his confidence, man. Holy cow. And then you got all this other there's just so many names that he has had to deal with these difficult personalities. And now He's got like Deontay Johnson, who's becoming a little prima donna.
And that was
Like,
like George Pickens, I kind of had that feeling on where, it was a one game where Deontay Johnson caught the first pass. He's, caught the first touchdown he's caught since Ben Roethlisberger. Everyone's celebrating for him, and George Pickens just kind of shrugs his shoulders and walks off like, damn, I guess I'm not getting the ball. And so, and I've always kind of had a soft spot for Deontay Johnson just because the dude's like a target vacuum out there, it feels like.
he's
Um,
been doing it for a long time, and he has not gotten a lot of love from the
no,
general
he
like
hasn't. And so
community. Like,
he falls right into that Terry McLaurin community kind of niche for me where it's like, it'd really be nice to see this
people I
dude.
feel bad for is what I call it. Allen
Yeah.
Robinson.
No, no,
Uh,
no, 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 no. You don't get to leave Chicago like the way he left it, and I'll feel bad for you. Like you're on
oh
your
no, no,
own.
no, no! I totally still feel bad for him because he completely he wasted his career.
No, I mean, he could have easily signed with Green Bay, but he chose to chase the money.
I don't
So
know.
that's on you.
There's just certain people I feel bad for in the background, and it's like he kind of qualifies, and it's just like Terry McLaurin is another one where it's like, God, just Jesus, could you get him on a real team?
Hmm.
Uh, and there, like, the list goes on. There's Deontay Johnson falls into that category where it's like just out there doing like work, just out there working.
He did until that fumble bounced right by him, and he was just
Yeah, and
like,
then he
"No,
didn't
I'm
care and he
good."
just walked right by it.
I'm
And I'm like,
like, and for that reason, I'm out. So that
yeah, I don't
that
care
that was
anymore.
just that, yeah. Um, so yeah, those are obviously some players I'd probably try to avoid. Cortland Sutton's another one where this offense runs where Wilson's going to throw targets to Cortland Sutton. That's pretty much what it's going to be.
In the
Like,
red zone and
yeah,
nowhere else.
yeah. I mean, Judy, Mims, they've done
Mims
okay.
is a future project that I think could
Yeah,
be
that's
interesting
not
down the
this year.
line.
Yeah,
Judy is done in Denver,
yeah.
and they've already picked up his 5th-year option. So I don't know what the hell they're going to do with that,
They're
but
going to
I
try
will
to
be
trade him for
pretty
something.
surprised if he's back with Denver this coming year.
Hmm.
So I think they're going to try to get something to move him along because that whatever the answer is, it's not Jerry Judy continuing to play in Denver.
No,
And especially just watching Russell Wilson like play, he ain't looking for Judy.
no.
He was last year a little bit, but this year it's just he's just looking for Sutton.
Hmm.
And it just makes me laugh because it's like, it looks a lot like Doug Baldwin, huh, Russ? Look at him run. Like, is that Doug Baldwin? If you kind of squint, like, Doug, when did you grow 3 inches? Like, it's like that's literally what I feel like I'm watching. And Sutton is gonna get freaking paid off this season. I don't know who's gonna do it, but you know that's coming.
Hmm.
Sutton is gonna get paid, man. You don't have that many touchdowns. I got to go. I don't recall when his contract runs out, but like, if I gotta go figure out, I haven't looked. I'm not sure when his contract expires with the Broncos, but if it's the end of this year, oh my God, Sutton is gonna get freaking paid coming off all these touchdowns. You know I'm right. If he was a free agent, somebody's gonna pay that man a boatload of money to come play for them because they don't know and they just know they're gonna do what fantasy players do. He had 11 touchdowns. Well, like, come do that for me. And it's like, yeah, well, but yeah. So are you in or out for Sutton for the playoff run?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, you know, you might have a tough matchup against New England, because they just like to take your best weapon away. But overall, he's going to get the targets. He's going to get the volume somehow, So I like LA twice. I like Vegas, and then playing at Detroit. Like
Okay, for
that's
the record, the Broncos do have an out year on Cortland Sutton. Uh
all they do.
yeah, it's the end of this year. They have an out year. They could get out uh for like 7.5 million in dead cap, or they could kick the extension and they'd be paying him $13 million a year. Basically, they'd actually be paying him less for the next 2 years than what he's making this year. This year he's making $18 million. He'd be making $17 million and change for the next 2 seasons if they kick the option on. And I'll be honest, they're probably going to kick the option.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me if they did that.
No.
Because he'd be 30. You'd get him till he was 30 at that point, and then you let him go. And by the way, that would basically co-term to when Russ's contract is over.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just deal with it that way, and I think that would make a certain amount of sense given the year that he's had. And Judy's the one who they end up moving on because Judy's also younger, and he's the one that you could get something in a trade. Somebody would trade you something for Jerry Jeudy.
It's not going to be as much as what they've been asking for.
No, they wanted a first-round pick, and I've been saying you're never going to get a first-round pick.
And now then I heard it was like they were trying to get a second in
that was at the deadline, and then nobody wanted to give them a second either, because they knew that if they just wait, none of the teams that were bidding needed a wide receiver bad enough to because the teams that are bidding are not the teams that are trying to win. The teams that are primarily bidding is like the Patriots. Carolina is interested, but Carolina, he'll never end up in Carolina.
No.
The Patriots is real. I could see him being with the Patriots, and he would actually be their best wide receiver, like right off the bus.
Easily.
Yeah. Not really close. So that would be interesting. And I know there's a few other teams that were in there, but none of them are like, I need a wide receiver to go win a Super Bowl type of teams. It's more like, I'm interested because if you're just done with it, because you're clearly done with it, I'll give you $5. I'll give you a ham sandwich. So, but I don't know if that's going to be how that works. So, anybody else?
No, I mean those are really the, two target hogs aside from most of who you've mentioned, and everyone else is pretty kind of obvious at this point. So,
all right, then let's do this. We're going to go through tight end, and then we're going to sign off for the year. And then Lance is going to be with us on Thursdays, setting rosters, doing roster people stuff, answering people's questions, helping us figure out how to open a strip club at a Buc-ee's.
We'll make it work.
Talking about movie recommendations. It's a very different show, Lance. You're going to be shocked. It's not a traditional football show. So all right. So for tight ends, Isaiah Likely is the one that I think everybody should know. Cade Otton has been my perennial go-to. And then people should know that Tyler Conklin is actually very quietly having a very nice year. And if I was in a real emergency situation, like I saw a few people get into last week with the buys, where they were like trying to figure out who to pick up off the waiver wire, I'm like, Tyler Conklin. It's ugly as hell, but the man gets volume because the Jets suck. He's very much the bottom end of it. I don't want to give people the impression that like I'm super excited about it or anything, but if I needed a streamer last second and everybody else is rostered, I go and look for Tyler Conklin. But I would much rather have Likely. Likely's number one by far because they're actually going to use Likely and they're going to build. They've been, you saw it. They were building packages for him. They're running screens to him, similar to how the Cardinals are using like Trey McBride. Isaiah Likely is getting some like real usage, and they're not afraid to get him involved. Because they use the tight end there, and Andrews ain't coming back. So, but he had success last year. So Likely is definitely the one I want if I'm looking at fresh tight ends. And then Cade Otton is number two, because Cade Otton is actually having a very interesting little season. I know he had a 0 in week 13, but every other week he's basically averaging like 9 fantasy points on the year. Like if you just break it down to an average, he basically averages 9 fantasy points on the year. He gets a lot of 9s, like 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. And I got to tell you, 9 ain't so bad. if you're that far down looking at tight end, and he can do it if he scores, and he can do it if he doesn't. So he's an interesting name if you're kind of like in the 15 to 20 range on the tight end sheet. I prefer him to Conklin, but likely is like, no, that guy's in the top 12, like we're borderline close to it. Because unfortunately, like the Tyler Craft, the Trey McBrides and all that stuff, that's kind of all over with. If you missed out on Jake Ferguson or McBride or whatever, and then you saw what happened to Freiermuth, he had a 20, and everybody's like, yeah, free Freiermuth. Went right back in the tank. And you could try to sit there and rationalize it away with like, oh, it was a bad weather game. There was multiple. He wasn't involved.
It was against Arizona.
Yeah, he should have had a monster game and didn't. And it really throws cold water all over all of that. So that's kind of it for me, man. I like those three names. And then, to be honest with you, if you want to sit here and talk about Tanner Hudson while I nod politely, feel free. Go ahead. I don't care.
Since a bye week, he's averaged 8 fantasy points a game.
You're actually going to do it. Hold on. I'll nod politely.
Oh, I'll talk about him. So he's averaged 8 fantasy points a game since then. He's getting about 4 targets a game. And you have Jake Browning under center. He's not going to make all the same throws with the same confidence that Joe Burrow makes. So for him, it's going to be first read Jamar Chase or first read T. Higgins. And if it's not there, check down right to Tanner Hudson. So he's a safe pick. I definitely feel like obviously no tight end is, bulletproof of getting you a 0 aside from Travis Kelce. But I do feel, if you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here for tight end, Tanner Hudson could be valuable for you. Gerald Everett is interesting because he's had a weird year, especially considering how well last year went for him.
Yeah, he's had a weird year.
And I don't really like the state of the Chargers. We've kind of made that clear already. But, I would keep my finger on the pulse just to see how it is. And Brevin Jordan, again, Houston player. Schultz has, been injured. Now Tank Dell's injured. Just leaves more room at the table for him to eat. So
I refuse to get interested. I will feign interest and nod politely at Tanner Hudson. I refuse to get involved in Brevin Jordan. I absolutely categorically refuse. I'm tired of it. It's not a thing. It's never going to be a thing. They've tried for years to make Brevin Jordan be a thing for the Texans. No. I refuse to go back down this road. You want to talk about Noah Brown? I'll talk to you about Noah Brown. I am not getting suckered back into Brevin Jordan. I would 1000% rather roster Tanner Hudson over Brevin Jordan. Like, I am not going back.
I don't know that I disagree with you. I'd probably put Hudson above Jordan, but for me, if I got to take a flyer on someone between, say you're stuck between, 3 at the bottom of the barrel, between Brevin Jordan, Michael Mayer, Kyle Granson, I'd go Brevin Jordan 10 times.
I would literally need to be in the scenario you're describing, level desperate, where it's like you're just completely screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how ugly tight end is, folks. It's an ugly position. Running back is going to become the new tight end soon, where there's just 12 guys that actually matter and nothing else is relevant. That's just how it's the way we're going. We're down to 24. You only need 12 more injuries. I'm only being sort of a dick, by the way, which is kind of sad. Like, I'm being a dick about this, but only a little. That's kind of the level of bad we're dealing with here. As far as Guillotine goes, we talked about this last week, and nothing has changed. It's so hard to it is so hard to want to sit here and nitpick tight end when the position is this bad. It's Kelce or bust. Like, Kelce is the only one that you have any confidence in and feel good about. Everybody else immediately has problems. I'm glad Hawkinson is back from the bye because Hawkinson at least has been somewhat consistent this year.
Laporta's been exciting. Laporta
Laporta
was
has
exciting
been
early
good.
on.
Laporta will be overdrafted next year at a rate
Oh,
that
yeah.
will be freaking insane.
I enjoyed him for the year I had him.
Yep, because it's going to get way too expensive way too quick. So it's like things that I actually would be excited about. Yeah, I agree with you. That's kind of the order here. It's Kelsey, it's Hawkinson, it's Laporta, and then it's actually Trey McBride by virtue of the fact that they have nothing else. Doesn't help
Yeah.
this week, but Trey McBride is rounding into that arc of the tight end career where he's kind of figured out how to play football. And then Kincaid has also been a nice little surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been falling off as the team struggles. He started a little slow, and then he had a huge run from week 7 to like week 11. 10, really. And then it's kind of started falling off again. So the jury's out on that. Kittle is the ultimate wild card. Because it's like he's had some crazy boom games and some big busts. Ferguson has been pretty good. He's been a nice little surprise. It just reinforces the narrative of any tight end that plays with Dak Prescott has value because that's just how it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just how he is. Whether it's Jason Witten, it doesn't matter. Like,
No.
it just does not matter. Ingram has had a decent year. Njoku, especially with Flacco,
Oh,
is
yeah.
interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That probably looks the best it has all year, honestly, with
yeah, and
Flacco.
then Cole Kmet has been interesting, justifying that stupid contract they gave him. Goddard's going to come back at some point. Schultz has had an okay year, injury aside. We'll see if he can get back here. He's not done for the year. So,
No.
and then honestly, after that, I listed 12 guys, by the way. Exactly 12. After that, it is a freaking disaster. Because after that, you get into Taysom Hill, Pat Fryermuth, Cade Otton, Isaiah Likely, Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, Logan Thomas, who's had a couple good games but has been brutal as Washington has gone in the tank. Conklin, who at least has been consistent. Mayer, Gerald Everett, Juwan Johnson, Jonnu Smith, who had some nice games and fell off the cliff. Tyler Higbee, who's been dealing with injuries all year. Hunter Henry, who's disappeared. They should start hanging up, like, they should start sending out milk cartons with Hunter Henry's picture on it. He's just gone. Chiggy Okonkwo, who's done nothing. Like, you see my point? Like, it is
Yeah.
so hard for me to sit here and nitpick and tell you, like, I don't want that tight end. I want to bench that tight end. No, that's not analysis, and it's not helpful.
No.
There's only 12 guys for the whole league. And by the way, it's one guy, then there's a tier of 3, then everybody's the same.
Yep.
Through the end of the tier of 12 is what I mean there. So 1, tier of 3, 8.
Yeah.
Nothing. Streamer equals nothing. Like, that's it. That's tight end as a position. So there's no, like, how do you want me to analyze that for you? You know, and really, like, mine nuggets. There isn't any. There's nothing. When you have a sample size that's small, go ahead. Give
Spider-Man
me
meme.
something. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's what it is. I was trying to get the other hand in there, and
exactly. It is.
I'm working
Spider-Man.
on it.
It is 100% the Spider-Man meme. Dude, I've been doing this for like 6 years, and I still can't point it out. I do it wrong. It's a running joke on Thursdays. I do it wrong all the time. Like, I still can't figure it out. But, like, yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Tight end is so bad. It reminds me of the analysis I gave on running back, where it's like, normally in a normal year, I would be sitting there and being like evaluating the pros and cons of different players and trying to figure out how to turn my roster. And this year, it's like, man, it is such a small sample of viable players that if you play in a 12-team league, everybody gets one tight end and there's nothing left. And if somebody was smart enough to get 2 tight ends and has 2 of them, somebody's just going to have nothing.
Right. More
So
power
it's
to
just,
them.
And it's just how it feels with running back this year too, just by virtue of like the position and scarcity and injuries layered on top of it. That it's like there's 24 running backs in the league that I would feel good about. Maybe you could get to 28.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the problem is running back normally goes to like 35 or
Oh yeah,
36. Like
yeah,
you'd at least have flexes. There are no flex running backs anymore. There's just RB2s, and then it's like, there's like 5 flex running backs. That's not enough.
no.
Wide receiver is the only position where I feel like you actually have some level of depth that remains.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. That's always the part of my lineups that's taking the most. For running back, it's pretty simple. Tight end, obviously, and quarterback. You either have them or you don't. And then for me, every single week, it's like, well, do I want to risk George Pickens in my slot, in my flex,
No,
or
not
do I
really.
want to put Terry McLaurin in there? Like, it's the
Yeah.
choice of like, ugh.
Terry McLaurin was actually on pace to be okay. He was the wide receiver 24 in fantasy up until like this week.
Yeah.
And then it's just dead. It just died. And it's just like it's not his fault. He didn't suddenly forget how to play
No.
football. It's the Commanders. The
Hmm.
Commanders are just in free fall as an organization, and that whole organization needs to get taken down to the screws and rebuilt. And I would love to see Terry McLaurin go play somewhere else. Like I would absolutely just love that. Like go play on a different team
I
where
heard
you can.
Chicago's looking for someone aside from DJ Moore, and I saw something about Bieniemy coming to Chicago. So I mean,
I don't know if they can afford this. I don't know if they can afford it.
probably not, but it's the
Like
one thing Chicago fans have. We can dream, we can pretend. Aside from aside from looking back to 85.
yeah, and I'm older than you, and I was born in 1987. So let's just get that
Yeah.
out of the way right now. Like I've seen the video of them winning the Super Bowl on VHS, so I'm that level old, but I wasn't alive for it.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's one of those situations. Like,
No, and that's
uh,
yeah. The yeah. It's tough.
it is. Well, it's been a pleasure setting lineups and giving advice
Hmm.
and helping people navigate Guillotine in the background. It's been excellent. It's been a great year, Lance. It's been a pleasure working with you. Although I say that like we're not going to be working together for the rest of the year. That's not what I mean. But it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure doing this. I hope people have got some real advice. Some of the feedback has been interesting.
Hmm.
I hope people have gotten some good use out of this. And just one last time, I wish everyone luck with the last waiver run for Guillotine. I wish you luck in the playoffs. Tune in, obviously, on Thursdays for Roster the People, and then again on Sundays for the final countdown with Jason, Lance, and myself on Thursdays, and then Jason and myself on Sundays. Setting lineups, answering questions last minute. It's what we're going to do. We're going to do it all through the playoffs like we do every year. We're going to get you to the end. Sign up for our Discord if you're stuck, especially. Uh, and it's just been an absolute pleasure. So it's been really fun, and I know I'm looking forward to the playoffs here. Candidly, I'm not trying to like be a baby, but candidly, I'm actually looking forward to just this season being over. The NFL needs to go away and figure out how to get some people healthy, and then we can try
Yeah.
again next year.
Yeah. Try again. Try
Like
again, NFL.
you
Like
can
you
try again NFL, but
messed up all over yourself. Like
this
try
this
again.
one you kind of puked all over your shoes here.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
pissed
it's
on
like
your leg. Start up. Well,
let's try again next year.
yeah.
But yeah,
Buckle
this
up and try
year, like I
again.
said on like I said last Thursday, I'm sorry if this is your first year playing fantasy football.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's normally not this bad. It's normally not quite this difficult.
Hmm.
But it has been that being said, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I hope people are going to see continued success. And for one last time, I've been Neil Smith and Lance. Parting words. Before, obviously, they'll people will turn it on Thursdays, but parting words to the Making the Cut audience.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast working with you and everything, and learning and growing. You know, being prepared, coming here. So yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been, you know, a lot of fun interacting with the Discord, and some of the wild questions we get and everything. And yeah, hopefully we at least got some people to the finish line here, because that's the whole purpose of the show.
Right, exactly. It's making the cut for a reason. And
Yep.
hopefully everybody has made the cut. Just want to make the playoffs. You know, that's
Yep.
always my philosophy when it comes to any format of fantasy football. Chip in a chair. I just
Mhm.
want to make the playoffs because whatever happens, happens. You
Mhm.
can't control it at that point. You know, you want to win. Everybody wants to win, but you can't win unless you make the playoffs. And so that's usually how I gauge my success less on championships, because winning championships, the people who've played fantasy football for a long time, especially successfully, will tell you this. Winning championships, there's a certain like random element to it.
Yeah.
It's like really hard to win championships, and there's a certain amount of luck that gets involved, and there's a certain amount of like, it's a one game sample every week. You know what I mean? Like it's there's a certain amount of random that you have to overcome when it comes to winning a championship. You got to get a lot of like coin flips to go your way in a row. So it's hard to gauge that. I mean, obviously you want to win a ship every year. But that to me isn't the gauge of success. The
Mhm.
gauge of success to me is playoff appearances,
Mhm.
because it's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to get there. And in order to get there, yes, there is a certain amount of luck that you have to have that persists all year. But there's also the human part of that where it's how well did you manage the waiver wire? How well did you navigate the injuries? Because this year's been really bad, but there's injuries every year that you got to navigate. That's just part of the game. So that to me is the big measure for success. So for the making the cut audience, I don't view it any differently. It's just getting to the playoffs. And in Guillotine, there is that it feels great when you get there to the playoffs and you're in that final three teams and you're just kind of sweating bullets where it's like, oh God, all the teams are good. It's even different than in like redraft or dynasty where you have 6 teams that get there, and you could still, especially this year where you're going to have some questionable teams make the
Mhm.
playoffs. I have a league that I play in that I am getting very upset at this year. I have a bunch of teams that are all like 9-win teams that the system I run in the background that I preach works pretty well. You know what I mean? So I got a lot of 9-win teams that I'm pretty happy with. And it's like, will we get first round buys? I don't know. It's what we're playing for this weekend. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But whatever. We've already clinched the playoffs. We're going to the playoffs either way. So it is what it is. But I got this one team, man, that is 6-7, and it just refuses to act normal. And in that league, I could still make the playoffs.
Mhm.
I'm 6-7, and I'm fighting for the six. I'm fighting for a playoff spot because that's the. And I feel like I'm talking to the more I talk to people all year, I'm getting a lot of stories like that where
Yeah.
people are like, "I'm not dead yet," like, because that is kind of as frustrating as this year has been. That has been kind of the one fun thing about it is there's a lot of random
Mhm.
where it's like it's really hard to eliminate people this year because nobody's good.
Yeah.
So there is that going on in the background, and I have had a certain amount of fun with that. As much as we've complained, and as much as I will continue to complain because this has been a crap product and a crap year, uh, there is definitely some of that fun. You got to find your fun where you can find it.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So hopefully, if you're listening to this and you have been all year, you've made the playoffs in your Guillotine League and you'll enjoy it. And uh, just one last time for Neil Smith, for Lance Exley, we hope you've made the cut. And let us know on Discord, on Twitter, however you interact with us. Let us know what your feedback was for the show, changes we can make for next year. And then obviously, yes, come with us on Thursday nights for Roster the People. We'll be helping set lineups. But yeah, good luck on the last waiver run. Hopefully you get everything you want. Hopefully Christmas comes early. And then yeah, come bring your lineup questions to us on Thursdays, and we'll be happy to answer them. And then bring them back on Sundays. Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock Mountain, 11 o'clock Central, noon Eastern, where we are sitting down, rat-a-tat-tat, rapid fire answering questions, and figuring that out in the background. So yeah, let us know on Discord. And with that, one last time, hope you made the cut. And until we talk to you next time, keep up the nonsense. And we'll see you on Thursday.